schema. I want to talk about a little bit about schema first. When you coding here, you'll see that also in the book later on, and also in the database table here, you see that the table has you have the schema plus the table name. Okay, these tables here has to belong to somebody or something, like some object. So in this case, if you were to create your own table, then automatically the server will assume that it belongs to the DBO, which is called the database object schema. Okay, it belongs to that category. Of course, later on you can create your own schema too, so that as you can see, these come with like human resources, a person, and so on. Okay, so after that, the name, what's called the schema name or that group, you have the actual table name. Okay, so and then let me start from over here. So you have the table over here on the far right. Okay, so that's the table name, and then before that you have the schema, which is like we call this a schema, or just a category belongs to. Okay, so a group like human resources, person, sales, and whatnot. Okay, and then before this is the database name itself. So in this case, it will be Adventures Work 2016. Okay, that's the database name, or 2014 for mine. And then before that database is the actual server. So you have 4 parts, and it has only 4 parts. The server, in this case, in my case, would be rac-herc slash MSS, or SQL Express 2014. This whole thing here is part of the server. Okay, that is the name of this machine because it's locally created inside this machine here. I can also use an IP address. If you know the IP address, you can also get that too. So instead of rac-herc, I could put the 127-something, and then slash the server name itself, which is the one that the instance you created, and replace of the server here, and then slash, and then the database name, and so on. So that's why you can have this on a network. You can connect to another database in a different system, and remotely you can connect it to it by using the IP address. Okay, so we have 4 parts. Because we're locally inside this machine here, inside the server, so you'll see that you don't have to specify these 2 parts here. These 2 are optional, so you don't have to worry about that. Of course, unless you don't care about, if you don't want to, take care about this issue up here, because right now I'm using the master database, and so if I don't specify the actual schema or the actual database name, and if I just put this 2 parts here, it's going to assume that these 2 parts belongs to the master database instead of the Adventures Work. Okay. If you want to be safe, then you can always replace this with the actual database name, and that will take care of that issue too. Okay. So, but because database could be so long, we don't have to do that, and we could omit this whole thing, and then just write the table name and then the schema. If you have the schema, anything other than the DBO. So the DBO is like the default schema, which means you don't have to specify like DBO or something. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. That is the default. But if you use a unique schema other than the DBO, like human resources and persons like that, you have to include that as a part of that to reach that table called, let's just say, address. I can't just put address and it knows what to do with that. So you have to include the schema. In this case, it would be the person, and then dot the actual table name. Okay? So this is just some rules that I want to make sure you are aware of. So let's just say again, if you want to select something from the, let's just say, person table here, right? So we could just to make sure that it's safe. The safest way to do that is to make sure the drop down here is selected to your database you're working with. So the script here, it doesn't matter where you get the script from, where you pull it from. The one that is being used right now, it has to be either pointing to this database here and the drop down, or you have to use the use and then the name of that database above it. Okay, anything below that from this line will be using this database. In that case, this will override whatever I select up here. So either way you do it, it doesn't matter. And this IDE alone. Okay. If you want to, let's just say, save the script, and I pass the script to, let's just say, Andrew, and I want him to run it, then I want to make sure that I want him to use this database no matter what, then I should put that into the script. Okay. So make sure that's included. But for now, as you work in here, or if you work in your assignments, you don't have to include that. Just make sure you select that database. So let's just say I want to select, the select statement looks like this. Select, in here you have a column. So the keyword select followed by your columns. And let me just put that here for now. The comment here. Select followed by your columns. Okay. And then the from, and then table name. Okay, this is the syntax. I should say column here, lowercase. And the reason why is because I want to make it so that you see that all the capital letters are keywords in SQL Server. So by convention, you should always write your scripts with keywords in uppercase. Okay, it just makes it nice and easy to see. You'll see there are some examples in the book and other places that might just use capitalized letter. But I always like to use capitalized a whole word for those keywords. Anything else should be just follow the convention, like in lowercase or the Pascal case here. So if you want to select something, and the columns here means you can have, of course, multiple columns, right? Remember columns are the attributes, okay, or the fields in the table. So in the that person table, if you expand this under the columns, you see that it has about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fields and a key. This is the key, and you say it's PK, FK here. So that's a key. We'll talk about key later. But it has 12 columns. And this row QID, I think this one here is auto-generated by the system. So every table, I think, should have that column in there. Well, I don't see here. But there's one in there. It's built into the system. But let's just say I want to load or request the just title, name, and then first name and last name from that table, right? So we will say select followed by the name of the column, the actual column name. You have to make sure you spell the correct column, otherwise it doesn't work. And it's not case sensitive. Okay, so in here it's not case sensitive. I'll use uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter, just as long as you spell the correct word in there. So I want to select the title. Notice that the intelligence knows, kind of. I want to get the title, the first name and last name, okay, from table, right, person, that person, right, person, that person. Okay.
Now, what's it going to bring in for title? The business entity, the key?
The title is here, so whatever the title stores, yeah, it's pretty tiny, so yeah, it should bring that for you. Okay, so this is the statement, and then if you run it now, if you click run, execute, it will run everything from line 1 all the way down to line 13. If you just want to pick and choose what to run, you just select that and then run that from there. Okay, so go ahead and click execute, and you should see that result down here. Okay, so up here you see these 3 icons right here next to the comment here. You have the one that's selected is the one in the middle. It says results to grid. That means that the output of this statement here will be put into a grid like you see here. This is the result of the output. You can also choose so that you don't have to show here. It could show as a text. So if I click here, the first icon, and if I run the script again, you see that it puts as the text. It's a text file, right? You don't see the grid anymore. So that's another option if you want to use that. Well, because it's text now, I can easily copy and highlight these and put that into other places in my code. You can see that it's just plain text, right? Okay, so if you want to use that for that purpose, then you have that option. The third option on the right side is you save it to a file. You can, so that when you click here, it runs. It's going to export that result to an external file, and you can save that file. Okay, if you choose to do that. So by default, it should you should always use the grid here, so you can see the columns and data in nicely displayed down here. Of course, you can always resize it if you want to see it. I can't make it bigger and smaller in here, unfortunately. Okay, so it tells me this table here has 19,972 rows or records. Okay, so that's how much it has in there, how many you have. Whatever titles or whatever fields you select here will be pulled only. If you don't select anything here, if you just do that, you get an error because it does not know what to get. You have to put at least a column from that table. If you want to grab all of them, again, use the wildcard, which is a star. And the star will grab all your columns, which is about, I think we say it has about 12 or something. Yeah, so grab everything there, and you may not want to do that, right? So just pick and choose what you want to load, and then grab and then use those. Okay, so as you can see again here, it has 19,000. If you just want to get the top 10 of this list from the top 10, then just say select the top 10, right? Just like in English, the top 10, and then you put that there, and now it only grabs the top 10 out of the 19,000, and then I'll get only the top 10. Okay, so you can put that here like this, top 10, or you can wrap it with the semicolon. I mean a paren. Usually it's much easier to see this way than have all these data floating around in the space. Okay, I think you can even do this if you want, but it's not common. But you can also do that. Or that'll be expression. No, so you can't. In expression you can. Okay, so you can do that. The top 10, and then just show those in there. If you want to omit any duplicates, like for example here you have a lot of nulls, maybe, well no, it has to be the whole thing. You can all put a different keyword, but we'll do it later. Okay, so one of the assignments, I think maybe in this week's assignment is, or maybe next week, I forgot which one. Okay, you're gonna do a lot of these select statements. I think it is this week, and then I just want you to pull maybe the top 15 or so. You'd have to do the whole thing, because if you pull the whole thing here, and then because I need you to take a screenshot as well and then paste to your homework assignment. So you can just select the top 10 or top 15. I think I asked you for just top 15. Okay, so this is how you would do, how you can restrict that to grab only the top 10 of that result. Now this one here is not always the top 10 you see here from 1 to 10 because we didn't do any sorting. If you sort it, it'll be different too. Okay, so when you sort it, the top 10 is like after it's sorted, then grabbing the top 10, right? It doesn't mean grab the top 10 first and then sort the result. Okay, so it's different. You get a different result if I were to sort this first. So as you can see here, if I just do like from person, right, it doesn't work because it does not know what person table it belongs to. Okay, so I make sure you include that in there. And then by the same token, if you want to remove this window here, because there's no way to do it, because it's a little bit tricky, and it can be very frustrating. So if you press the Control R, and then you always can hide the result. Okay, Control R will hide and return the result back and forth. Okay. after you run it, and you'll see that result, and then just press Ctrl R to remove it, hide it. Okay, you can also, you don't have to put this in a single line. I could, usually move this to the next line if you want, and then, indent it or whatever it is, so that it's much nicer. You'll see that some people tend to do this. Select, you put all the keywords here, your other stuff here, and you can say where here, and then, order by. So all the keywords on the left side, and everything else is on the right side. If that's more convenient for you, that's fine to do it that way. Some people like to indent it because this is all part of that first statement, so you can do that as well. There's many ways to do it. Or you can do all this in a single line, which is completely fine too. It's hard to read. Okay, so person. Okay, so we omit the database. So if you want to put like adventure works dot person, right? So that's the long way to do it, right? And you can even put the server here if you want. If I put like my server is what it's like RAC dash, put the whole thing there, SQL Express 2014, right? And then I have to wrap this with a bracket, okay, because of the slash here. You might do a division. It thinks that some kind of division doesn't make sense. So you can see that I have 4 parts, okay? And it's typical you see that in the book and in other places as well. You always wrap these with square brackets. You can do that if you want. Okay, I don't do it, but sometimes you have to. Like in this case, you have to. Otherwise, it does not work. Okay, same thing with these columns too. You could also do that with the square brackets. And this is actually the safer way to do it because it's safe. So we don't have to include all of these parts here. Just the table or the schema plus the table name. All right. So notice when I run this, I get title, first name, and last name. And so the actual name for these headings are the actual names you see inside the table in here, because the way they're named this way, you get pulled exactly that way. And I can't just say, I can't do that either, because now it doesn't work, right? There's no space in the name. If you want to format that, then you can do it this way. You can say, you can use what's called an alias. Okay, so alias is that you can rename that field to a different name. Let's just say I want to have the first name with a space in between. So after that column, you could put the word as, and then you put first name. I mean, as a single quote, by the way. It doesn't take double quotes. Okay, so if I do that, then now this first name, which is the actual table name or column name, will be renamed to first name, and then it will display that in the column. So it looks much nicer. Okay. So this is you will put an alias to that column. As you can see, has a space in between. If you don't put all caps, that's fine too. You can manually do that, or you can do it. There's a built-in function to automatically convert everything to uppercase and lowercase and so forth. We'll do some functions later. So this word here is also optional. I could just take that out too, and that's fine. As long as it's next to the column name, then that should be okay. Okay, it's understood. As long as it's within this comma here. That means everything here is still one part, one piece, right? So first name is that name. The last name, I could do the same thing. Last name. Or just first and last. If you want to do it that way, that's fine too. Right? And then, as you can see, you modify that already. Next time when we do the joins, you can also put an alias for these tables here, because we join multiple tables. So really, when you do this, let me put this back to this normal mode. So notice here we have the title, the name, and first name, last name here. So typically you have to put the actual table name dot something. So what that means is that I have to do like person dot title, right? This is the complete syntax for that. Actually, you can go more. You can do the server name, right? We saw the whole for thing, right? But so later when we do the joins, this is what you have to do, because you'll be pulling two tables together or three tables. And then if you just put, let's say, title, and if I have a title in this person table, I have a title for a products table, and maybe the product has a field called title too, right? So it does not know which table it comes from. When that happens, then you have to explicitly say it's coming from the person table and not from the products table, okay? And you can see that, oh, that's a lot of typing to do, which is true. So later on, we'll also see that with the alias thing here, you can also say, I want to replace this whole table here with the alias just P, right? So when I say P, now I can replace this whole thing here just with P. And then you can see that it shortens the whole thing. And then everywhere else in my code, I can just reference the person table to the P table, okay? So this has become very useful, actually, later when we learn about the multiple table query. And again, this is optional. I can just do that as fine too. So kind of nice, right? So it shortened it. Okay. So however you select up here, the order is also kind of important, okay? Because whatever you select here will be displayed in that exact same order down here, right? So let's just see. Let's say if I put the title, you know, over here, then I expect the title to come last, right? You'll see that title's in the last column. Okay, so what you put here is it's important. The order is important. I mean, just for display purposes. It does not matter how you do it in the sorting and stuff. When you sort, you have the option of choosing which one to sort, which column or columns to sort by. Okay, let's go back to one more thing and then we can take a break. I want to make sure I cover this information here, just some of this stuff in here. Let me do this. So when you have time, just go over these notes in here and run some of these scripts. I can't. Move to left. Okay. So the select statement, that's all it does, right? You select data from a table. Now there's a difference between the ANSI SQL versus the TSQL. Transact SQL is part of Microsoft. This is a set of statements or functions built into the SQL Server that only works for SQL Server. Okay, it does not work if you move the code over to, let's just say, Oracle. Oracle has its own unique function also. Same thing with MySQL and other databases, because it's not a universal type. And the reason why is because, you know, the standard type does not maybe have all the features that they want. So they have the option of extending from this standard, and then they created their own commands in there. So every time you see the word TSQL, this is a part of Microsoft SQL Server only. It's not portable over, maybe some, but not all of them. So for example, like the way you create variables later on we'll learn is part of T-SQL. Also some functions like the cast, convert, and then the date here. Some of these are built into the server, but it's not universal to all other languages or other servers. Okay. So when you write your code, if you want your code to be portable to other servers, then you should omit or try not to use a lot of T-SQL in your statements. If you do that, it will not work. Okay. I'm not sure. I don't know if the book mentions that, but the other text what we used to use, the author usually was very nice. He always mentioned like this part is T-SQL only, so he put a little T-SQL next to the command so you know. Okay, so that is the major difference between the two. So for example here, this is part of the SQL Server, also different. So when you create a table, for example, if you want that field ID to be automatically increment every time when you add data, it adds the number automatically then. And the MySQL, okay, you have to use this keyword called auto increment. And Oracle, it's different. Oracle uses sequence. We'll learn this later. A sequence first, and then you create your table, the ID, and then when you insert the data, you put that sequence in here. So it takes a lot more effort in Oracle. As you can see, it takes 3 steps to do just that. Okay, but this is actually so Microsoft actually moving to using sequence as well. So you have the option of using sequence and also the standard increment. So in SQL Server, which is a T-SQL, right, you use the thing called identity, and that will achieve the same thing. It will auto increment the number. Okay, we'll learn this later on. I just want to show you the main difference between T-SQL and the inside SQL. So the next thing I wanted to cover when we come back from the break are the where clause and the order by and group by. The having, we'll see how much we have time to cover that, but the group by and the order by, at least the where clause. So why don't we take like a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9 o'clock and we'll continue on.